Thanks, listeners. Thank you for joining us for our radio show, Elko Live. Today, it's the first of the year for the Elko County Commission with a meeting this afternoon, and John Karr is in studio to bring us up to date. There's a lot on here. It's as though you didn't have much going on in December, huh?
Yeah, since we skipped that second meeting, boy, we get to make up for it now, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's typically an organizational meeting, but there's some other goodies thrown in there as well. So thank you for being on the program today, John. We appreciate it. And again, it's in advance of the meeting that begins at 1:30. And I guess we can kind of just dive right in. Usually the organization of the board is tops for the agenda. We are looking at an election year as well, so a lot of thought and planning goes into this. Currently, we have the commission chair, who is Rex Denninger. Wildy Bruff is the vice chair. What typically happens with the county commission is that the chair will move off and then the vice chair steps in. So, I mean, that could happen today.
I'm assuming that'll happen. Obviously, I haven't polled everybody, but that I didn't hear any background noise of why we wouldn't do that.
The only thing to insert is just the discussion of what folks might be deciding for in 2024. I mean, I guess it wouldn't affect Wildy at all. He is up for election, whether or not he is going to seek another term on the county governing board. You have already indicated you will be seeking re-election, and then have not heard yet from, in fairness, I haven't reached out to Rex, so I'm hoping he might make some comments today. He was appointed a county commissioner in 2014, filling that untimely vacancy created with Grant Gerber's death, and he's been on the board for a long time and has made a big difference in a lot of areas, and so it'll be interesting. I mean, I can't imagine he wouldn't run, but I don't know. Everything
we've talked about, no, we're both going to term out together, I guess, another 4 years if we get elected. But no, Wildy, I have not. I've kind of heard him say yes and no, so I can't answer that on the radio today.
All right. Well,
let's not forget about Josephine Mahoney, though, today. I hope she can make it. She was instrumental in the Veterans Day parade. We kind of had some confusion on that of no participation, but yet, anyway, Josephine really jumped all in and helped make that happen. So this is one of those awards that, no, she deserves what. And so I hope she makes it today.
And you know what? She is extraordinary, John. And part of the reason she's extraordinary is I don't know that she wants this attention. I mean, because I spoke to her, went to the organizational meetings, you're right, pulled this together in, a week or something, brought lots of diverse groups together. But she just did it because she said it was the right thing to do. She's not a veteran. She happens to be friends with veterans. But I mean, I agree. It would be great to single her out. So
yeah, but some people obviously don't like the recognition. I'm sorry. She deserves it. She needs to yes, she deserves it. Worked her butt off.
Right. Well, some have even said, hey, she should run for county commission. I don't know if you heard that, but not saying what district she lives in. I have no idea. So that brings us again to the next page. Yeah. Things that you really want to talk about. You should maybe lead the way since there's so much on here today.
The only thing on the, because we're all divvied up on different things, like let's just say while you're here, Wells, Wendover, Jackpot are kind of his liaisons. I'm on the school district liaison. The only ones that might change on that would be budget, roads, and then the sheriff's office. Most of the other ones will stay intact.
Now, do you want to?
And I don't even know if those will. It's just Rex and I have had some talk in the back about our last year. Delmo's been on the roads and on the budget. Him only having 2 more years. Rex having both sheriff and the budget, but I don't know. It's not. I don't know. It's not a big deal if it doesn't change. I think that all of them are working well, but include Travis on some more of those.
Right, and it usually is a learning curve, and Travis obviously is a good student, so I'm sure he'd be primed to sit on whatever board. I mean, do you have any preferences, or are you looking to?
I don't. I wouldn't mind getting on the budget one, just because the sheriff and the budget are two of the passions I haven't been on, but I do think Delmo and Rex are doing a great job on them, so it doesn't bother me either way.
Well, in all fairness, John, you've made a huge difference in the Elko County Fire Protection District, and so it would make sense if you could also step in, with these organizations, with budget and with the sheriff's office, because they are experiencing, some drain right now.
Right.
So,
well, especially the state gave some huge raises to the highway patrol. Which I'm not saying they didn't deserve it. They were underpaid. But then that's one of those snowball effects that, okay, now we used to take from the highway patrol, and now they'd rather go the highway patrol, and then the city raised, and so now the sheriffs are a little bit underpaid. So, and then you threw in the teachers, and this is once again not a criticism of teachers, but then they've got a really big raise from the state. All the counties did. So that starts that conversation of other county, state employees, public employees, well, how come they didn't get a 20% raise? So we'll be in for an interesting legislative session
So it'll be
when
good.
that comes up.
Yeah, so you've been through this before. That might be a good position for you to be on that budget committee, as you're sort of suggesting, I think, John. And yeah, you're right. I mean, money is important to a lot of people. It's important to have a career and a profession that you love and you're dedicated to, thinking of the sheriff's office. But if you're not making enough money, certainly.
Well, especially at 2 to 3%, it's whichever you prefer. And you start talking the 10
11,
to 15%,
right.
those kind of numbers. No, that takes a big difference in the wallet. So,
Well, and you have to think about the administration who they don't qualify for those raises too. So they're looking at wondering if their salaries are going to rise, with that of their employees too, right? So,
like I said, this is a whole big snowball effect the state has opened up on this. And once again, it's not picking on teachers, county, sheriff, anybody. It's
just the reality.
It's got to come somewhere.
So
I guarantee the Vegas Democrats will be headhunting for taxes in a couple of years. That's my prediction for Elko.
All right, John. So another reason to carefully consider who we prop up for our Senate seats. And I know Bert Gurr has indicated he's good for another term in the Assembly if voters will have him. But we're still eyeing the possibility. There's one announced candidate for Nevada Senate, but that's not a guarantee either. So
there you go.
So Elko County Code, moving on to that. If we gloss over anything I did notice that Carlin has a new city manager, and that's terrific news. Richard Braithwaite will be introduced during the meeting today.
Correct. I do not think I know that individual, but so it'll be good to introduce and have that conversation and hopefully be able to work together in the future. I'm not sure what happened to the other.
I think she promoted. Yeah, I think she just sought or was promoted to another position in another city. So yeah, that's what I understood.
She seemed to have done an okay job. I sure can't name anything wrong she was doing.
Right. And sometimes you don't leave when it's bad, you leave when it's good.
There you go.
Yeah, you want people to remember you by that. So,
right.
And you're right. Also on the agenda today, there are a number of appointments for boards, whether it's library board or the planning commission. There are terms there. And you have people who've indicated they would like to be reappointed: Rich Gensel, David Huff, and Dina Hartley.
I sure don't have a problem with any of those individuals. I can't name anything done wrong, and we're lucky to actually have some of those. Sometimes those boards are, especially the planning, can be kind of contentious sometimes, and it's a volunteer position. There's no glory, fame, or any benefit for being on those. So I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah, just from my experience and observing from this side of it, John, I think the Planning Commission is the one board that you're always going to generally make somebody unhappy, right?
Correct.
A planning decision comes and affects property. So, yeah. So, looking at, as we mentioned, the School District Capital Project Fund. That's kind of the biggie too for today, wouldn't you say? Isn't today the day?
No, we're not deciding the rate today. We're just now completing that. This ordinance will now be able to make that decision. So passing in an ordinance, we have to go through, you first have to present to the public, we're going to do this, and then we have to vote on it. But the actual rate will be decided at a later meeting, because I have that capital meeting the next Wednesday, or the third Wednesday, where the school's going to present to that committee by the state of what they recommend, the 5-year plan, and then we can go back to the county and give that recommendation on that tax rate.
And that'll be next Wednesday. So,
well, we won't have. It'll be after the meeting. 6:00 is our meeting, so we won't be able to have it at third Wednesday to have in the commission meeting that tax rate. So it'll probably be the meeting after that
in February.
Correct.
All right. So moving right along, and that is a big issue. The levy could be anywhere from 1 to 25 cents, and the state will be eyeing this. A lot of people in the community are interested in this. School board's interested, obviously. So.
You're right. It'll be interesting because this is a county tax that's now throughout the whole state, other than Washoe and Clark. So how the other counties deal with it as well.
Moving forward, discussion of an amendment. This one could possibly attract some attention because it does prescribe, I guess, if you will, or sort of dictate to a homeowners association. Don't know if Spring Creek's actually had this issue come up before, but there'll be a first reading of an Elko County code to change requirements of people who submit applications to the county for permits in zone change, variance, CUPs, modifying a lot boundary size, or building permits. And I guess at this point, John, is it fair to say that the HOA kind of had the last word on this?
Well, let's kind of break it up. It really is more of on the building permit side, changing lot sizes and all of those. I can't imagine it's not ever involving any HOA. But building permits, this is where it's not just Spring Creek. It's whether the Summit Estates that I live in or there's any other HOA in the county. If they have different requirements, currently we have to have them sign off. That HOA has to sign off. Even if you started through the paperwork through the county, the final or change order or anything like that, it still has to go back to that HOA architectural committee. And that's where kind of part of this is at of no. If let's just use my Summit Estates. If I'm arguing that no, I want solar panels on my roof and my HOA says no, but the county says it can, then the county's not going to be, no, we won't give you a permit because your HOA says no. Well, they said the county's saying, well, that's not our jurisdiction. We're not the police for you guys. If our county permit says it's okay, then that's up to you and your HOA, and that's your guys' deal. That's kind of where the crux of the fight's at of, or not even really the fight of where the question is. So if you had an HOA, somebody go, no, we're not signing off on it, and here's this builder stuck for whatever means, and the county goes. So what'll probably happen, and my guess is, well, it won't no longer be an ordinance that the county building has to do that. We'll still work with all the HOAs, but it won't be a county ordinance to require it, is my guess, but I don't know that. We'll see what happens today.
Yeah, so it sounds like that in that case, the property owner, if the HOA came in and said, we forbid you to do this, then the property owner and the HOA would have maybe a civil recourse or something. There'd be a lawsuit.
My guess, yes, you're right. But that's right now it hasn't been because the county's been the enforcement because they didn't sign off on it. And then if they do it and the county hasn't signed off, well, then our DA is involved and our sheriff or whatever else. So once again, we become the enforcing agent, even if it has nothing to do with our code. So that's where some of this. But we also had some problems with NV Energy and more of the electricians wanting to unhook and hook back up, and some of that working with whether it be an HOA or even building permits. We've had some of that. I don't think it addressed this much on this part, but it's more of optimizing the building department.
So, as you mentioned, NV Energy, but anything else that predicated it? I mean, because Elko County codes have been really tough to touch. They haven't been modified for probably decades. I mean, in a large scale way like this is pretty.
Well, this is still just more of not changing the codes. This is just us enforcing somebody else's codes.
Okay, interesting. So
now Spring Creek's going to be heavily involved. Thinking it's Spring Creek, but no, it's any HOA in the Elko County.
And it is the first reading, so people will have time. And I imagine that Rand Greenberg will weigh in on this?
Correct.
Okay, so it sounds like the count. Go ahead, Jim.
And we've got some or communications from Spring Creek as well and their attorney. So yeah, it'll be an interesting debate. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and it's just the first reading. So as it goes forward, you can find this information for yourself online, elkocountynv.net. And that's a great website, by the way. And you can also watch the meeting online this afternoon, or you can be there in person if you prefer. Let's see, moving on to, there's also some big projects proposed out in the Lamoille area. And I think one is a final map for dividing parcels. This is huge, 25 parcels, 40 acres each. So it sounds like a ranch is going to be possibly divided up by Jordanelle.
I haven't read that much on this. Normally, Delmo and Rex are more on this planning on this. So I know limited about it, but yes, you're reading what I'm reading.
Okay, yeah, it's a big, looks like a big project. And then some smaller projects, vacation of some public access along places in Lamoille.
Correct.
Also on the agenda today. Okay. Another one which could play into what we were just discussing, Elko County, for example, there are some instances where, we don't have developed roads. There are subdivisions that the property owners maintain their own roads. Elko County as a whole, as a master plan, might need an update. There are a lot of people who operate businesses, right, out in the county. Oh,
it's, in my opinion, maybe a little bit harsh to say this, but I'll say to you, it's kind of a free-for-all. As long as somebody has a state license, and really we don't have a mechanism to even enforce. Let's say you're running a ceramic shop, I don't know, out somewhere. Even if you don't have a state license, we don't have an enforcement we don't really have an enforcement on that. Whereas, okay, let's say you did ceramics, unless you're gassing off from your kiln or something, what big deal is it? But then if you're running a forge or something else and big old plumes of black smoke coming out, or you're running an auto shop and you're just dumping the oil on the ground or whatever, there's lots of things I'm not saying are happening, but those is why sometimes regulations are a good thing. And right now we don't have anything like that on there. But I don't know if the master plan would involve that or not. There's always been a discussion of possibly having a county license, just like you do a city business license. But there's not a lot of appetite for it right now.
As you mentioned, enforcement's the key. I mean, you can create a bureau or a division, but you have to staff it and you have to,
Correct.
So.
But maybe this master plan would eliminate some of the problems. Like out in Spring Creek, there's kind of an industrial way kind of area, but yet it wasn't really quite designed right on the size of the lots, having the proper septic, those kind of things for commercial areas. So I don't know if a master plan in this case would change that or help in the future. So that's part of this discussion. Do we need to really update it, have it looked at, or what are we trying to fix?
Right. And do we know, sometimes it helps when you know, for discussion's sake, who brought the agenda item? Any idea?
This was Delmo. I don't know if he specifically did this in case, but he has talked about our master plan because of some of the discussions on that out in Rendon. We looked at that tire shop, and then we also looked at more of that convenience market out by South Fork. Does it really fit the master plan of where it's at, where it's zoning?
And the expectations of residents.
Correct.
Existing property owners, yeah.
So I think we've handled some of those fairly well, but there is some truth to, well, okay, does it really fit a master plan in a community of where those would be located? And that's why I don't know if this is a good idea or answer that or not. Let's just use the South Fork area. Was it really planned out correctly to grow to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, whatever the number is, and have those amenities that, like a grocery store, a gas station, or whatever?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's pretty basic agenda item, fair to say. So whether or not the county, continues, it says it's for possible action. The expected cost to update the master plan would be about $150,000. And there's already a contract apparently being considered. So the consultant, the engineering firm who are not named on the agenda, I guess they'll come before the board if they need to.
Correct. And that'll answer a lot of those questions of what are we hoping to get out of it. Like I said, answer those questions, whether it be a South Fork, Rendon, Elbers, Osino, how much detail. If it's a very, very vague master plan, 150 grand to me sounds a little excessive, but if they're really diving into all these different communities and what they might need and changes in the future, it might be a pretty reasonable price.
Yeah, it's maybe if it's targeted to where the growth is happening.
Correct.
County Commissioner John Karr is our guest today as we're updating the county agenda in advance of this afternoon's regular county meeting that starts at 1:30. Next is an interesting, we know about the water rights concept for Nevada Department of Wildlife, and Caleb McAdoo, I think, and others will probably present. I haven't talked to a person who's not in favor of this little urban fishery. John, how about you?
When I was on the school board, this got brought up because they talked about using the water off the well up at the geothermal well as heating this in the winter and making a hatchery on this whole thing. As part of a science thing, but also truly a hatchery because of the warm water in the different areas. I don't know if that's part of this planning. I don't think it is. That might have been just a grand plan from one of their biologists, but I thought it was a fantastic idea, and I'm glad to see this going through because it is kind of a waste down there. And especially when you see the Chinese gardens over in Carlin, for that teen little community. That's actually kind of a cool little area they've done, especially when they do the Halloween little spook walk and all that. They do a great job. So why can't we have something like that down and make the river not just a quasi-homeless camp versus just a whatever?
The
city's finally cleaning it up.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
getting some
Changed
that guy with the goats or the sheep that help keep the weeds down, and the frisbee golf that they have down there. So no, it's kind of finally becoming something to use as opposed to just this 100 perfectly straight waterway down in the middle of town and forget about it.
Where just the muddy place where pioneers used to rinse out their underwear. I don't know.
It's a great way to, exactly.
It's definitely headed for a better future with this project in mind. Department of Wildlife developing a recreational area with fishing ponds, educational opportunities, and a genuine park setting. And they're looking for and they're pretty minimal water rights from the county.
Oh yeah, and we'll be drafting this, so for some weird reason something happens, it'll be reverting back to the county.
Okay. So that request is on the agenda, followed by something else, which is sort of weird because, I mean, people that live in Nevada for any length of time know that wild horses are not a native species as managed by Department of Wildlife. But on the agenda is discussion and consideration to encourage Nevada Department of Wildlife and sportsmen to be engaged partners in the management and control of the wild horse population in Elko County.
This is really to be more proactive. I've read so many articles, and it's disturbing that people, they have that warm feeling of these wild horses running through the range, and it looks pretty, and they think of the Wild West and all that kind of stuff. That's nice. And obviously a few wild horses on it, I don't really care, but they're not managed at all. And people want to say, well, these environmental firms are protecting them. No, they're not. They're attorney firms getting money to fight. They could care less if those horses there or not. They're in their big office buildings smiling at this poor little girl that likes My Little Pony, spending their thousands to send to them, and they're just litigating no matter what. So there's absolutely no control on wild horses. And the other fight is amazing how we demonize working ranches that has a food product that we're demonizing like these are the worst people in the world, a working rancher that has a cow on the open range eating weeds. It's actually pretty impressive how they've managed to demonize ranchers that are growing a food product. And I've always said this more than once in one meeting. So you want really good biologists. I'll just use Caleb McAdoo because we just said him earlier, and even though he's on that different side. But let's just say it's somebody like that. Do you want overseeing, allowing grazing, intelligent, educated people? Or do you want down in Brazil where they're just burning down the whole rainforest and it's a free-for-all and raising cows there? Which one do you want? I'd much rather have our true biologists watching and we're trying to pass, what was the name of it? It was outcome-based grazing. You would think that would be fantastic. Everybody would agree that true trained biologists go out and see, hey, we're having, let's say, global warming. We don't have as much snow. It's now March. It's actually the snow's off. Let's have the cows out now eating the weeds, the different grasses that aren't native here, out there eating them then, and then pulling them off early. Nope, they didn't like that. It's a set date. You have your cows from this 2-week, 3-week period, no matter what. Doesn't matter what's out on the range. It doesn't matter the weather patterns. There's nothing. So it's just bizarre to me how we'll save wild horses, but we'll do this to ranchers. So it's not about the range. It's not about the health. This is just about attorneys suing.
Pure politics. Well, and even if NDOW wanted to manage wild horses, which I'm sure that is not on their agenda. I mean, this is coming from, the county commission, but they wouldn't be able to because it is a federal designation, right? Yeah, I mean, I know you know all this, so this isn't something...
But I want the public to understand that
Sure.
Nobody's actually managing them. That's not they make it sound like they're almost extinct, and
they're
extinct.
They're 6 times
the wild
more.
tiger, I think there's like 500 in the world, and we've got like
80,000.
50,000, 100,000. Yeah, this is not an extinct population.
Well, and there's so much work to be done. I mean, if you really want to authenticate, a true, Mustang, John, look at DNA. If you want to, take out feral horse populations, right?
Well, that's...
Because wild horses don't have horseshoes, and they're not gelded. And plenty of wild horses out there right now are gelded and have horseshoes on. And that's a different responsibility.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And so, that's where as soon as it's a horse, a Mustang, a feral, whatever you want to call it, boy, it's just protected and you can't do anything. But even worse, let's just say now they're natural. For this discussion, let's say they're native, which they're not, but let's say they are. Okay, we get a drought. They're the only animal that NDOW or anybody else will come out and bring water to. We don't do that with a mule deer, with elk, anybody else. We don't go feed them when there's 6 feet of snow on the ground. We don't do anything to save them. But for some reason, horses, so we don't even let Mother Nature, if that's what you're wanting to do, take its course there either. We have to then save them on top of that. So it's really bizarre that people's little heartstrings are pulled on, and now we're making decisions based on that.
So I guess just back to the agenda. Anything that could possibly be accomplished? It's a possible action item, or is this just a platform for discussion?
I don't know. You're right. We're probably more of still sending letters to our national officials to try to do something. Cortez Masto really was the first to come out and make some efforts and see what was going on. But even her hands are tied when you get millionaires with heartstrings going, nope, save them.
Well, and truthfully, all the horses standing around in corrals that have been gathered that have not been adopted, it is, if not already, it's $1 billion a year problem.
Yeah, so they can stand and not move. And we'd be just appalled on dogs and cats up at the...
Well, we euthanize dogs, cats, puppies, and kittens.
Because we don't want them in a cage for 10 years. But yet we do that in a little corral with a horse with 1,000 other horses that can barely move.
Wild horses in captivity.
But somehow that's okay because it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Probably the only way to get to any resolution will be to strip away all the extremes on either side, John, and as you said, maybe include some biologists and some people who actually have an ability to analyze landscape and conditions of animals, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda, also the rejoining the American Lands Council, and there was a presentation at the recent meeting. I think this is about $15,000 that the county would kind of just hand over to this group. And again, what would the goal be of being a member of the American Lands Council?
Well, that's what they'll be presenting of what is their goal and what are basically it's like joining other clubs so they can actively fight for American lands and try to have some intelligence on some of these decisions. Mm-hmm. But just like the American Land Council is sometimes arguing with other groups, so how effective are they? I'm kind of interested in this, and this is definitely a Rex passion on this, on what they'll be able to accomplish and what they don't. So I'm almost curious to hear this as well.
Right, and as long as he fully discloses his involvement and that of any family members, and
absolutely,
yeah, that's really important that people know what their tax dollars are being steered toward. If it's a private passion, as you mentioned, and because in all fairness, we've seen this group. There's been infighting. I mean, there's not even consensus within the organization. There have been splinter groups and efforts.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about on that splinter group. I'm glad you brought all that up.
So, well, I wasn't. Yeah, thank you. I wasn't being political at all either, right? Just stating the facts of it.
That's correct.
So that is up for possible action, and whether or not the county, because maybe they could also privately fundraise to be a member. I'm not sure. We did that with the Constitution County business, right? People privately fundraise to put us out there that way. And if we're moving on, looking to, or is there anything else that I have maybe glossed over that you meant to?
No, minor thing on the Myberry. They're doing a presentation to show how the Myberry rebranding, has it really affected anything? Yes, no, maybe. I don't know. Some stats on that. And then they're on their bookmobile.
I know I felt a little bad about the last time we talked because I know, well, you had suggested that maybe the rebranding wasn't working, but I guess I would disagree only because if you're not a Myberry user and you don't kind of get in there and see the excitement, I mean, because I've heard really good things, John, about the Myberry rebranding. So I just wanted to make sure we put that out there. Yeah,
I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying they're presenting
yes,
how
well,
it's done.
On this agenda. Yeah. Last time we were on the radio together, I think, I know, because remember we were deciding, is it library or Myberry? I said Myberry.
And I said, I'm sticking with library.
Yes,
exactly.
Okay, that's what that was about. So, just in fairness, because they have an advisory board. They have their friends of the Myberry, and they just have an amazing staff, and they are so dedicated. Plus, they do a lot of other things, too. I'm sure you're aware, with the helping extend the broadband, the access throughout rural Nevada. Oh, is that another topic?
Well, okay. First off, no, they're very wonderful people. Jenny Eckert's actually on here, is getting reappointed on the Myberry board and all that. And so that part's not the debate. It's, do you start getting blinders on of your goal, but then you start expanding? So you just said on broadband. Well, then we have the TV district. Well, they're looking at broadband. Then you throw in national, Cortez Masto, and I always want to say Wacky Jackie. I'm sorry because of the Trump comment. It's not. It's very derogatory.
Oh, Jackie Rosen. Gosh.
Rosen. Sorry.
Okay.
I was trying to think of her. That's not what I call her. Unfortunately, it's okay. Senator Rosen. Excuse me. That was one of their passions on broadband for rules as well. Well, okay, are they all working together? Next thing you know, we have
think they
3
are.
different people. I don't
Yeah.
know if they are. That's my point
Okay,
of
yeah.
just double checking the blinders on, are we seeing what everybody else is doing?
Right, right.
Like the bookmobile. Okay, for years, 100% why they did it. Now, does it make more sense to give some of these rural farms and everything else just broadband? It's quarter the price. I don't know. I've never penciled it out, but does it make more sense? Are we asking those questions? I don't know. That's the point of, are we looking at the whole picture?
I know. And sometimes I think discussions about books are just as emotional as discussions about wild horses, because the people
Correct.
that love the books, they want the books, right? In the hands of people, right? Different than broadband. If that all crashes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But is it smarter? I don't know. Buy
I know
a
what
book
you're saying.
for $200,
Yeah.
but then it's used in 10 times. Now you got to throw it away. Or is it better to have 50 subscriptions to people on their Kindle? I don't know.
Do you? Oh, you use your Kindle then, so
Yes.
that's how you're a reader. Okay, yeah, interesting.
I make Braden read twice a week that we have to sit down together and go, nope, we're reading together no matter what. I don't care.
See, and I'm the book person. I like the book. You can take the book everywhere and don't have to plug it in. And if it gets wet in the bathtub, it doesn't.
I like your theory. Other than I
Okay.
got sick of waiting when I order a book, so I just went download now. I'm impatient.
Okay, that explains it. Well, John, I always have the best, friendliest conversations with you, our county commissioner. This is not the end of the agenda, so I just want to make sure anything else that jumps out before we send you downtown to actually attend the meeting. That you're going to be there for a while today, it looks like.
It will be.
Okay.
The only other one that pondered was the statement of qualifications. This used to be a very, very short list, but the roads department has expanded working with other engineering firms, and then we're finally actually have enough budget that we work with architectural firms. So this list has greatly expanded, which is a good thing. The only thing is, I'm going to pick on Lana because she's a dear friend of mine, Lana Carter Engineering. As a commissioner, just reading this, would I have a clue if Lana's qualified in this? So I might ask the building department to research more of this, or this is their short list because of their thorough review, and this are how it is.
And I might be helpful. If it's in blue and you click on it, then it goes to, so
No,
the
it brings up
SOQ.
their
Oh,
stuff.
okay, I see what you're, okay.
I'm just saying, is there any background of maybe, and once again, Lana's a great person. I think she's a very good engineer, but I'm going to pick on her because she's a friend. Maybe the building department's going, every time Lana gives us something, it's never right or wrong or anything else. Have we done these reviews just to make sure, not just because they're legally licensed in the state?
Oh, and I think that's probably why it says it's,
It says
you
a
know,
short
it's a
list,
short list.
But because
You
this
can
thing's
use
grown
them.
so much,
Right,
that
I see.
the short list is it really truly the short list. I'm
And-
glad we're doing it. I like all the people on here, and I love Lana. She does a great job. I'm just picking on her because she's a friend of mine.
Yeah, and I think too, more transparency the better. So when I saw that, I was like, great. I mean, then there's maybe a little less bickering behind the scenes and people accusing someone of favoritism or not
Right.
using one firm over another. This way, you can drill right down and go, well, you're not really qualified to bid on that project, right?
No, I'm glad to see
yeah,
this because
yeah.
it's expanded big time. I'm very happy to see this, but I was going to talk to the building department on this to make sure, how are they doing this short list?
Right, because
Have they themselves gone through it, or this still is the short list of everybody that applied?
Oh, good point. And those are good questions, and I'm sure you will ask them because obviously going out to bid for professional services is very different. So there are,
And I don't see any bad ones on here personally. I know a lot of the engineers. I want to make sure the process is somehow happening.
all right. So that takes up a bit of time, and when you get, and then. Let's see. I want to send you downtown on time because I don't want Amanda looking anxiously at the door
That's
saying,
true. I guess it
"Where's
is
John?"
1:05, so
I
guess
know
I'll
we got to
start
get you
wandering,
down there.
especially if Damo's on break still. He won't be at the meeting.
He
so.
won't be at the meeting, so maybe some of the issues that he wanted to discuss they'll be tabled. That might be helpful too, actually, for your agenda.
I'm sure he'll be trying to call him, but yes, we'll see.
Oh, okay. He might sit in. Well, John, thank you. John Karr is our county commissioner. We appreciate your being on the program, and we'll look forward to the next discussion. We're trying to get back to doing this every Wednesday, so, I've really appreciated the attention that the assistant manager, natural resource director, Curtis Moore, is giving it, you, Delmo, and fold in any county departments. Hopefully I can have Rebecca Plunkett come on because she's our county clerk.
Right.
Yeah, that would be great. So put in a good word, will you?
It'll cost you.
Thanks, John, always. Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for Elko Live today. Again, you can follow along online, elkocountynv.net, or in person at the County Commission meeting. It begins at 1:30 today.